Hey, my name's Kyle Porter. Welcome to the Normal Sports Show. Our first ever Normal Sports Show, episode 1. I guess we did have an episode 0, but this is really exciting. We've got a fun sort of lineup of guests today. Whenever I started this entire business about a year ago, I'd kind of been thinking in my head about, okay, what would a show look like? Do I even know how to put together a show? Right? Because I've been on other people's podcasts. I've done radio. I've done a little bit of TV. I've gotten fairly comfortable in front of a microphone and camera, but I've never really put together a show. So how do you do that? What are the ins and outs? How does that even work? And I think one of the things for me was just start, and some of that will come together over time. But the second thing, and the cool thing about having your own show, is you can just go ask people what they do. So I asked a couple friends to join me and give some of their thoughts and takes after having done this for a lot longer than I've done in a similar space, whether it's radio, YouTube, podcasting, TV, whatever it is. I kind of pulled some different people from those different areas and just asked them for their advice, asked them for what they thought made it for a successful show. So that was a lot of fun to get to talk to people that I consider friends, but also that have had a ton of success in this arena. So thank you guys for joining us. This is going to be a ton of fun. I've got about 1 million questions to kind of explore as we get into the Normal Sports Show, not just in this episode, but hopefully in future episodes to come as well. So first up, DJ Piehowski, No Laying Up. We get into kind of some of his thoughts on what makes a successful show. And then after each one of these, I'll kind of give my takeaway or my thoughts on it as well. So hope you guys enjoy that. And thank you again for being here. Okay, DJ Piehowski, welcome to the first ever Normal Sports Show.
Thank you for having me. What an honor.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
I'm glad. I know we don't chat enough. We don't see each other enough, but as you know, I'm putting this all together. I'm lost in a lot of ways. Do you remember what was the show, the podcast that the guy was like putting it together and kind of raising money? Do you remember this?
I don't think so.
And he was taping himself as he's like trying to put this podcast. It was Gimlet. Do you remember Gimlet?
Yeah, I missed this one specifically though.
I can't remember the name of the podcast, but he was like, it was such a circus and it was so fun, and you felt like you were along for the journey. So maybe I'm trying to recreate that a little bit, but I'm just curious, and we're talking to a lot of people about this, but what is one thing that you've learned about making a good, you've done so many different things across YouTube and podcasting and a lot of different stuff. Just what's one thing that you've learned that you would tell me or even tell yourself at the beginning, like, hey, focus on this. Like, this is really important.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. Best of luck in the endeavor. It's fun, it's frustrating, it's electric, it's maddening, it's tedious, it's all of those things. But I'm sure you're going to do great. I am well aware, very self-aware of the fact that I inherited a very good situation because Solly, Tron, Randy, Neil, those guys did a lot of tireless day one work to get the podcast, the No Laying Up podcast, like to where it is. So I'm sure the first thing that those guys would say, I'm guessing, not to put words in their mouth, would be truly just like keep pounding. You know, it takes a while, and it's funny if you look around at. I mean, you can look at golf specifically, you can look at any vertical, but just how few shows get to episode 10 or whatever, because it is a lot of work and it's a lot of planning and it's a lot of post production and it's a lot of these things that I think everybody kind of sees it as like, yeah, you know, you hop on the blower and you hit record and then you post it, and I don't know, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people just download them, and then you get to like episode 6 and there's 47 people listening, and it can be pretty mind numbing to get to that part. But it does take critical mass. It takes like building up a library. It takes figuring out what you're going to be, what you're good at, what you're not good at, listening back. What did you like? What did you not like? So all of that's kind of a preamble to, I think, my one big thing, which was a good exercise. You asked me to do this a couple days ago, and I've been thinking about what to say. And I've taken it in a bunch of different directions in my head, and I realized like that's kind of the point, is I think that I think doing this it's kind of embracing a lot of contradictions. Like you have to be very good at embracing a lot of contradictions, I guess would be how I would say it, because I think on one side of the aisle, you're going to hear like, you just got to do it for yourself. Just do what you think is interesting, and that's it. You know, you're going to find the audience, which I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think on the other side is like, well, it's people got to like it. You got to like, you got to find an audience. It is an entertainment product. You got to meet people where they're at. So it's like those two things are kind of fighting each other. There's the whole commerce side of it, right? Like, yeah, just do it with no ads forever, and like people are going to love it. It's like, well, it is a job, so you gotta figure that part of it out. So it's kind of embracing that stuff, and so it's I think just being very comfortable in the uncertainty is one thing, and then I think the other thing is just being pretty radically confident in your own tastes and what you think you would want to listen to. I feel like the worst version of a lot of these shows kind of starts with, like I think everybody tries to kind of Mr. Beast things a little bit, and like, I'm going to crack the formula and chat GPT, how do I do podcast? And, following like the checklist. And I think that can work to an extent, but if you're trying to build something long lasting, you're trying to find people like you. And I think in order to do that, you got to just trust what you think you would want to listen to, and what questions, like this is a much shorter way to say it, but when you wake up in the morning, like what questions are you asking? Somebody else is probably asking the same question. So if you can come up with a way to answer those questions, and those questions might be, what is, Joe Highsmith's strokes gained over the last 3 months? Or those questions might be like, hey man, I'm kind of bored. Like, who can I hang out with today? In my earbuds.
Yeah.
I think it's like identifying what you're best positioned at to answer, or where you're best positioned to kind of meet people where they're at and answer whatever question they're looking for.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like we live in such a world of like this self-helpy, like, hey, here's the way, here's how to do this type thing, and it's like, I think you consume enough of that stuff and you realize, like, I think everybody's just like saying what their own experience was. Like, I don't think they're like the people that say like, oh, this is the way. It's like, you're just telling me like how you did it. Like, I don't think that's like, do you ever feel that?
Of course. Yeah. And I think what's weird is like, I love hearing all of those different, like almost to a fault, where I'm just like, I read a ton of those books, and after every one, I'm just like, oh yeah, cool. They convinced me. Like, that's actually right. And then I read another one. I'm like, oh no, actually I do need to just blow up everything, because this person was pretty convincing about this. And, so some of that, like, I don't know, there's some fun, I think, in exploring a bunch of different perspectives like that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you get into like the how I built this type stuff?
Not as much as Neil. Neil loves that stuff, loves How I Built This, Acquired, all of those types of kind of like, almost like, I don't know what you'd call them, nonfiction type of podcasts, I guess, right? Like just X's and O's. Here's how something happened. I don't get into those as much as some other people, but I feel like every time I fire one up, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's just not really what I seek out usually. I'm usually much more in the, I don't know, I like analysis stuff. I like whether that's, actual like what's going on in the world and why, or art stuff or music stuff or movie stuff, or I love listening to people that are smarter than me synthesize what's going on. I think that's always time well spent.
Yeah. Last thing, you mentioned taste, and that's something I think about taste a ton. Like, I think it is probably the most I think it's the most underrated thing for people that are in sort of the world that we're in, because yeah, just for a million reasons. So I'm curious about how you develop your taste. I know that probably for you, a lot of that is outside of golf and outside of like the sort of world that we're feel tethered to day to day. But yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of one of those that, like, if you think about it too much, you start to glitch out a little bit, and you start kind of trying to teach to the test, and so I think one big thing is try not to think about it too much and just follow your nose on whatever draws you in, and get pretty attuned to your own your own tractor beam and follow that. But like you said, it's definitely a lot of stuff out of golf, and not in a standoffish way or like zagging while everybody else is zigging sort of way. It's just kind of where my mind is drawn to. But then on the flip side of that coin, embrace the contradictions here. I think I've also just gotten much more comfortable in what I love about golf and being pretty unflinching about that, and I think you see that as, to bring it to golf for a second, like when you see, oh my God, the PJ Tour needs to change. We need to blow this up. We need to redo this. We need to yada, yada, yada. I think for a long time, I was kind of beating that drum a little bit harder than I am now. Whereas I think maybe it's just the older I've gotten, or the more I've understood a little bit more like how the machine works, the mechanism of pro golf works. It's like, I mean, a lot of these things are there for a reason. And, there are 45 events because it is kind of nice to watch golf on Sunday afternoon. It is kind of nice to have a constant here. And like, do things need to change? Of course, yes. But I guess what I'm getting at with that is, I think the not superficial stuff, the packaging, I think can change in a lot of ways. But I think I really love the core of what golf is. And I think like embracing that kind of makes for a good mix of, the two, right? Like taking the traditional things I love about golf, and I love keeping score, and I love playing out of divots, and I love all the like things that some people think are kind of persnickety about golf, but I also love music and movies and art and all kinds of different things that I think can offer a little bit different perspective to that game as well. So I don't know if that's an answer or not, but that's best I can do.
Totally identify with that. And, for me, it's not as much movies and music, but it's other things that I think bring some, I don't know, I think the way that you and a lot of all the No Lineup guys and just the new media people talk about golf is like, yeah, it's not just birdies and bogeys. Like it's the part that people love is like the referencing this random, like the two phones thing, like it's insane, right? Like, but it's that's the part that really I think people get drawn into. So that's been inspirational. Everything that you've done, whether it's helping out with the two pods or all your work on Tour Sauce and the YouTube page has been not only inspirational for me as I've kind of started my own business, but also just a really entertaining and fun thing to enjoy. So thank you for that. Thanks for your time today, and
of course,
good luck to the Brew Crew.
Yeah, thank you. Big stretch coming up. Best of luck, man. I love reading the newsletter. I love seeing what you got going every day. So keep getting at it.
The thing that really stood out to me about what DJ said, and I kind of alluded to this, but just embracing the contradictions. That sounds like such a weird thing to say, but it's totally true, right? Like what he said about, hey, pursue what you enjoy, and because if you're just pursuing what you think you should enjoy or what other people want you to enjoy, you're gonna burn out. That seems incredibly obvious, but at the same time, you have to embrace this idea that it also like has to make money, and if there's no audience, then it doesn't make money, and if there's no way to sell it, then it doesn't make money, and so. I think, as with most things in life, like the middle ground, the middle of the two potential extremes is the right way, is the path. So yeah, I love the idea of embracing contradictions, because I have a tendency to just run to one of the extremes of like, I'm only going to do what I want. And that's it. I'm an artist. You don't understand me. I'm just going to do whatever I want. And if people don't like it, fine. Well, that doesn't work, right? Because I have 4 kids and they have to eat. Or you can run to the other side of like the commercialization of it and like, oh, I'm just going to try to make as much money as I want. Well, that doesn't work because you're going to burn out in like 15 minutes, much less 15 weeks or 15 months. So I loved that idea of embracing two things that are seemingly contradictory. And I think DJ is such a great voice for that, because he is an artist. Like, he is a really talented creator. Like, his visuals and his ability to storytell through, through what No Laying Up has made on YouTube and places like that. He's really, really good at that stuff. And so for him to be saying, like, yeah, you do kind of have to embrace both sides is something that I'll definitely take away from that conversation, and is something that I'll think about a lot as we keep creating this show. Okay, Bob Sturm of The Ticket here in Dallas. First time I've been on your show. First time for you to be on my show. So
awesome. I'm fired up, KP. It's great to be here, man.
Thank you. I always appreciate your time. So as you know, just kind of asking around, asking different people that have been doing this for a lot longer than I have, and doing it at a high level and a lot more successfully, obviously, than I have. But I'm just curious about one thing that you've learned over your career at The Ticket, and doing all kinds of different shows and podcasts and radio and everything. What makes a good show? What makes a good presentation to the audience? Like, what have you learned? What would you tell even your former self that was just starting out about what makes a good show?
Well, what I would tell myself is be yourself. And I think, obviously that comes easier to you because you're a little further in life. I was right out of college. And so what I wanted to be, what my voice would be on the air, was kind of a casserole of everybody I'd ever heard, right? And so, which isn't weird if you think about, like, young musicians. They always say they're influential bands, and you're like, yeah, I could totally hear that in your work. But I sounded probably like a Jim Rome cover band on some level, and various other people you could tell were influences, but it wasn't me. And so it's this weird deal that if you're on the air for 1,000 hours, and you're sort of impersonating somebody you heard, or three people you've heard as a combination of them, you realize you run out of material, and because you're not being authentic, you're not being yourself, you're being what you think people are looking for. And when I worked with Dan McDowell for many years, it was such a blessing for me to work with somebody who was so authentically them, for better or for worse. He's not anybody. He's him. He's an original version of him. And so I sat right next to him, and he never told it to me. I just saw it. I just saw that this guy is not doing an act on the air. He's not channeling somebody he's heard in the past. He's being him. And so it starts there. Is the voice you have is uniquely yours, and so take advantage of it, and the perspectives you have, obviously, and you have no problem there having fresh takes on things. And so the young me needed to be me, and that was the toughest thing. From there, honestly, doing a show, I've had the opportunity to do shows with a couple guys, Dan McDowell and Corby Davidson in particular, who both have influenced me greatly, and I probably haven't told them enough, but in both cases, you could just tell that their goal was to have a good time. And if you're having fun, your audience will have fun. And if you're not taking the world too seriously, they won't either. Lighten up, it's just sports, all this sort of thing. These are all the things, these are all the lessons I guess I have learned. And now that I'm, over 3 decades into this crazy thing, and lucky enough to be entering my mid 50s, I guess, after doing this. My first show was when I was 21 years old, I just think it's so much fun to do this. And my worst day is still, I always say, it still beats a real job. And so, if your audience gets that impression that we're having a good time, then frankly, the rest takes care of itself pretty easily.
That's one of the things that stood out to me about just spending time with you or talking about a lot of this stuff is the preservation of your own joy in doing this. And
yes,
I'm curious about, because I personally feel that as well, but I also haven't been doing it as long as you. So I'm curious about how you've are there things you have in place to maintain that? Are there people that remind you of that? Like how do you preserve that?
I think for me, the driving force of that is when I was young, I had a dad who did not like his job. And I love my dad, but I'm pretty sure every day he went to his job, it was work to get in the car because he didn't like it. He didn't like weekends ending. He didn't like vacations ending. He didn't like, having to go back to work because to him, it's what you do to survive. And so you can feed your family sort of thing. And so I guess my thought process subconsciously as a kid was, man, I got to do something that just looks like it's a joy. And to me, what's a bigger joy than working in the toy department of life, which we call sports? I mean, the ultimate dream for all of us is to play the sport, right? And I think you and I tried to go as far as we could as athletes. Mm-hmm. You did better than I did, but we both tried. And that would have been my first priority. Somebody says to 6-year-old Bob, "What do you want to do for a living?" And I'll tell you, I probably wanted to play for the Milwaukee Bucks, and something along those lines. And it didn't work out. And so now, how do I stay in the toy department? Well, I need a sports adjacent job, and I could never understand as a college guy how many sports press people seemed to be bitter old curmudgeons who thought everything was awful. Everything sucked. Nothing's as good as it used to be. And I just could not fathom having that take on sports, that you're actually now treating that like my dad going to the railroad, which he did not like doing. And so I guess I always had it in my head that if I'm lucky enough to ever have a job where they are literally paying me to go to games or to go to tournaments or to go to something that people pay for, people save to go to these games, and they're paying me and feeding me to go. Are you kidding me? So I just never accepted the idea that I could get bitter watching football or basketball or golf or whatever. So it's come natural. I have a natural curiosity, as I know you do as well, that I just want to learn about something new every day, a new athlete, a new golf course, a new tournament, or a new whatever. I just want to know something I didn't know yesterday. And that is a natural thing. And that has me reading 4 or 5 books at a time, for the last several years, and using Wikipedia every day to learn about, the midfielder for Newcastle United that I didn't know about, or just whatever. So there is an endless amount of things to learn, and I'm not close to any of it. And so every day I just chip away, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's one of the things that I think about a lot, is because I've experienced it in even in golf media. It's like, man, some of these people that have been in the business for a long time and are older and have been doing it a long time, they don't seem like they enjoy it anymore. And maybe they never did. And
right.
Like, man, we're at the Masters, like,
right.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
I'm glad that thus far it still feels like such a joy, not only to be there, but also to hit publish and to hit publish.
Yes.
And I think that's something that I have really admired about you, again, being a little bit ahead of me and seeing like, oh, it is possible to continue to maintain that joy even as you get older within this profession. And so that's been, I don't think I've ever told you that, but that's been something that I've really, taken from you and has really affected, I think, and influenced my own career. So thank you for that.
Man, I love to hear that. It's just like a thankfulness of, not forgetting how many people would switch spots with us in a heartbeat. And so live your life, do your show, write your column every day. Like somebody out there can't wait to get to their break so that they can read what you wrote or listen to what you said. Like that's their oasis in their crappy day. And hopefully their day gets better because of what we provide in the toy department, right? So that's the idea.
Who are the other inspirations besides Jim Rome? Have a take, don't suck. Welcome to the
Well, yeah, and he was an influence back then when probably Bill Simmons was to me, and I'm trying to think. I mean, there was a showbiz element to it that I didn't understand. Like sports talk radio was just being born when I was getting out of college. So I kind of hit the lottery. If you read the book Outliers, you know the value of being in the right place at the right time. Like the dudes from Apple or Microsoft were just happened to be students at Michigan when the giant supercomputer was brought to Ann Arbor. I mean, there's yes, you probably were born with a great brain for it, but you have to be at the right place at the right time, and there's all the sliding doors. Influences for me though are just those eternal sports nerds that no matter how long we do this, we only get more fascinated, not less fascinated with the games we cover and the athletes we watch, and sort of our responsibility to almost be historians that are going to settle not settle, that's narcissistic, but kind of weigh in on the debates that might be LeBron versus Jordan or Tiger and Jack or all these things, like people don't have time to really consider all of the things we consider. I kind of think we have college educations on the stuff if we're studying hard enough.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's our narcissistic obligation in sports to weigh in on these silly debates. Who should make the Ryder Cup team? Who's going to win the college football championship this year? How should we decide the college football championship? All these things are kind of goofy, time-wasting debates, but for those of us who work in them every day, let's have a little more knowledge than the plumber who listens to us. No disrespect. Plumbing's very important. But I would just say it's our obligation to put in the work. And therefore, when you say who inspires me, the first name that comes to mind is like Joe Posnanski, who is, I grew up, which is weird because he's kind of my age, but I grew up reading him in Sports Illustrated, and now he has his own Substack. And every day, he's the biggest baseball nerd in the world, but he also is a huge sports nerd in these other spaces. And I'm just like, man, like there's a bigger nerd than me. That's so cool to know. I need to continue to read his playbook. And there's other people like that, but I think you hit on it a second ago by the people in our profession who kind of just got here, but they don't really have the everlasting fire of they can't wait for tonight's games.
Yeah.
Literally every night of their life, they're looking forward to tonight's new games.
Yeah.
And I think you can tell quickly which of us wanted to be here with all of our might, and then which ended up here randomly because they had to support their career or their family. I think you can tell the difference because many of us, even when we're off the clock, we're still on the clock because it's what we love.
Well, I think it comes through in the writing or the talking or whatever too. People can tell that. I guess my last thing for you, because this is something that I think I struggle with a lot, and I think you probably struggle with it or maybe have reconciled it, but I think it's the Scotty Scheffler idea of like, hey, all of this matters.
Yeah.
And also like it doesn't matter, right? And so like how have you reconciled this idea of being in a profession that you're right, like we have a professional responsibility, and I think almost like a calling to like be excellent at our job, like to do great work, but also like sports doesn't ultimately matter. Like how do you reconcile those two things? How do you deal with that in your day-to-day work?
Well, let me tell you that's what kind of made me want to get to know you more, is the way you live your life and the way Scotty lives his life. And I just think there's a lot of us out here who think that faith is a really important part of our existence. And probably the most important part, if I may actually put a label on it. And I have a brother who is in the ministry full time, and we have the same head of hair. we have the same broadcast voice. We have a lot of the exact same skill sets on our scouting report, and yet he is preaching and studying the Word. and I am laughing at fart noises and talking about football games. And at times you wonder, is this what I'm supposed to be doing in life? But there were two things that have helped me reconcile it, I think. One is how many people um, kind of have a knowing nod to who I am and what I'm about, because they are as well in their walk of life, and they're so appreciative that maybe their favorite sports nerd also has a lot of the life views they have.
Yeah.
So that's always very reassuring that God puts you in a place for a reason, and what you do with it is totally up to you. I mean, you can certainly misuse a platform, but you can also think every day, am I the only Jesus someone will ever meet? That's something that's out there quite a bit. Then the other thing is just all that sports has allowed. And sports has allowed everything in my life, from mission trips to adoption to a clothing drive we do every year in Dallas for the homeless, and just all of the good. And a lot of it is financial, but a lot of it is platform. Like, I have a podium which allegedly has a couple 100,000 adult males listening to my voice. And if that's the case, and I can say, hey, if you got some clothes in your closet you never use, I got some homeless people that desperately need them. Can you help us out? And they all have hearts, and they're all like, sure, yeah, let me swing through my closet this weekend and see what I can find. They come out with 2 giant bags of jeans and sweatshirts, and suddenly we've done good in the world through football or basketball or whatever. And so I guess those are the things. I didn't mean to get all deep here on you, but I guess those are the things that make me reassured that I'm not kind of wasting my potential,
Yeah, no, I identify with all of that, and I think I would add to it, for me, even like just the flexibility that a lot of our jobs offer to coach youth sports and to be like with my kids and with their friends. And yeah, I don't know, we could do like 2 hours on this, but
I'm down whenever, man.
Well, thanks for your time. Like I said, you've been so successful within DFW for a long time, and that's been awesome because it has provided you a platform, but you've also been just personally inspirational to me. I know we don't spend a ton of time together, probably don't play golf as much as we would like.
Let's do it.
In general or with each other, but
yes, sir.
Thank you for that, because it's been personally meaningful to me.
Well, it's a pleasure getting to know you all this time, and it's great that we have friends who have sort of helped connect us through time, and I can't wait to see where you go with this venture, because your ambition is extra inspiring. So I'll be listening and locked in as usual.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate your time.
See you, brother.
My takeaway from my conversation with Bob, who was very generous with his time, is I said it in there. It's the preservation of your own joy within work. I tweeted this after. I hate the term tweeted, or I tweeted this. I wrote this in a place that is formerly called Twitter, is now called X.com, the everything app. I wrote after Tommy Fleetwood won the Tour Championship. He said, I love coming to work every day. And I said, man, that is way more valuable than winning $10 million. Now that's a position of privilege, right? Because it's a very privileged thing to get to be in a place where you love coming to work every day, or to prioritize for that. Not everybody gets to do that. Some people just have to survive, right? So I recognize that. But I do truly believe that enjoying your job is such a good gift. And I wrote this after I wrote about this after Scotty kind of talked about it at the Open Championship. And so to get to, and I told Bob this, but to get to see somebody who's a little bit ahead of me in their career, in a somewhat similar career, we do different things, but ultimately we talk about and think about sports all day, which is very cool. To see somebody that has preserved that joy in his job is is awesome. Like, it's really, really cool, and something that I aspire to, because I've mostly done that thus far, but Bob's been doing it for a lot longer. So I just think that is, I don't take for granted that I do enjoy, not just enjoy, but like love getting to do what I do. And so, it was cool to talk to Bob about that and to be reminded of it, because I need to be reminded of it very often. Otherwise, it's extremely easy to forget. Thank you to Turtlebox for presenting today's Normal Sports Show. You asked for a smaller Turtlebox, and they listened. Meet Ranger, the most portable, lightweight Turtlebox yet. Turtlebox took everything you love about durability, performance, and sound quality and packed it in a smaller, adventure-ready design. Yes, it's still waterproof, drop-proof, and built to handle the elements, just in a size you can take everywhere. Toss it in your bag, clip it to your pack, carry it with you, or mount it to metal. The speaker's made to move. The built-in magnetic side sticks to anything metal, like your golf cart, which I prefer, truck, tailgate, toolbox, even your mom's refrigerator, which is often where my kids have it. Wherever you set up camp, the tunes, or preferably this show, are locked in, and you can stay on the move. You can check them out at turtleboxaudio.com. Joe Musso, welcome to the Normal Sports Show. We're reunited once again.
Roles have reversed. Happy to be alive in the group chat still. I miss you in forums such as these. I came in a completely different garb than you're used to me as well, but I'm excited for this endeavor for you. I've been one of those people when the surveys come out, I'm clicking for some audio offering. So awesome to be on episode 1 here, and I thought you just wanted like a tight 10 on Spieth's case for Ryder Cup, so that's why I'm actually here. And I realize I've dated us immediately, but that I just wanted that laugh out of you.
By the time this comes out, we will know for sure this Jordan Spieth is not on the Ryder Cup team. We could.
What an Easter egg!
I can make a pretty good case for it, but we'll save that for a different show. I'm curious. I wanted to talk to you specifically. You were one of the first people I thought of as it relates to this show, because, like you said, I haven't endeavored into audio video on my own. Haven't built a show yet. Obviously, was part of one at CBS Sports and have been on a bunch throughout the years. But this is what you do. You build shows, and you and it's something that you do every day. And I think that having been on your program when I was at CBS Sports, when you would ask me questions about golf and Spieth and Ryder Cups and everything else, you always did such a great job of it. And so I was just curious about how you think about what makes a great show or presentation to other people. Because you've been doing this for a long time, been doing it very well for a long time. So I'm just curious about, what would you tell yourself starting out, or somebody like me who's starting out not having really built anything like this before?
Well, not to go off the rails and rebut immediately, but you were a part of the building of our golf offering at CBS Sports HQ. When I got there 5 years ago, it was like a 3-play highlight and this guy won, and we turned it into half an hour, full hour, big reaction to big moments. So whether or not you knew you were building a show, the things that you were offering to it was certainly building that show. You've built this product as well. So I think the building box has been checked, but that takes me to kind of where my head went when you sent me the prompt, because I think building a post-game show or building a preview show or building live reaction and building a podcast are two separate things, because 1, the medium, and 2, the size of the production. Because the first thing that came to mind when you sent that question to me was communication. The biggest thing in getting HQ to grow and getting these shows to grow has been the communication from coordinating producers to producers, producers to talent to the people in the room, our TDs, our directors. Everybody's got to be not just rowing in the same direction, but shared in the vision. So I think the muscle that I've developed that I think has been huge in getting these things to grow quickly and succeed quickly is the ability to communicate what's in your mind's eye. Because even if you're on the same page, the way you kind of project it in your head is going to be different than the way your producer projects it or the way that your illustrator projects it. I'm sure you cross these bridges when you're doing the newsletter, that I saw it this way and it came out this way. And sometimes that's an amalgamation of our thoughts and our biases. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes you want it tweaked closer to the thing that you want. But being able to communicate the way it looks in your head. So like your vision for this show, everyone who's going to touch it, your ability to communicate to those people how you see it, and their ability to communicate back to you, that collaborative work that you end up getting once you get comfortable. So that all to say, that's an effort in a studio show of, in our case, on a nightly basis, 25 people. Mm-hmm. Having your bubble and having your crew that's going to put this thing out, I think that it is only a catalyst. The size of the group that's going to put this out allows you to communicate it more effectively, more quickly. But that's a place where I think that I've had to refine.
That's a great point. And I'm curious about, because the one thing that always struck me about working with you was your like how prepared you were, right? Nothing caught you off guard. You had seemingly, like, shout out to Keegan, contingency plans for any situation that we would find ourselves in, whether it was live or later or whatever.
Arrests.
How important is, like, what or is preparation to you as you kind of build a show?
Preparation, I try not to be maniacal about much. I am maniacal about my preparation because time and again I am given these little buds, these little moments of like that the 100% of what you prepared for, the 20% of what you used, and then that 1% that gives you the moment. And not to like plug my content, but we just did a sit down with a bunch of big CBS names heading into the NFL season, and I had Nance and Romo, and I had prepared to ask Jim Nance a question about how the NFL has evolved from 1988 when he first stepped into a booth with Pat Hayden watching Vinny Testaverde in the Bucco Bruce creamsicles in the uniforms. Like, that's how I was going to frame this question to him as we're sitting there. And the question I asked prior to Tony Romo was, do you have a teammate that Jim reminds you of in the way that they approach the work? I mean, you played with Jason Witten, you played with all these legends, you were the quarterback of the biggest corporation in sports.
Yeah.
Who does he remind you of in the way that he approaches the work? And he's sitting there, and he's like, high school or early career, and Vinny Testaverde comes to mind. Romo goes to Vinny, and I hadn't brought up Vinny yet, so I'm like, I got him. But that only comes from the preparation of going to look for that piece of, who did he call the game? Whose game was he calling? Who was he standing next to? How are you going to frame this question in an interesting way? So there's a lot of stuff that hits the edit room floor, to use the overused pun, but like for that one moment of like, got him. And it's not even the asking the question or the answer that you get, because they were gracious and blown away. But it's like, whoa, like, come on now. Like Romo's like, that's something. But for me, it's the 15 seconds after Romo says Vinny Testaverde while he's still answering where I'm like, I got him. Just reeling him, let him go. And then, so preparation is what kind of, it's my fortress of solitude. It's why I can do what I do comfortably, because it's public, it's out there. The mistakes are as well. We've all made them on different platforms, but coming at it I can live with the mistake if I'm still prepared. I can't live with being underprepared. That's the feeling in your stomach of like, we're not going to get the best version of this thing. So preparation to me is the whole thing. I'm glad that you had that experience and sitting next to me, because that's what I spent I've been with HQ for 5 years. That's what I spent the first 2 years doing, was communicating to people, and oftentimes over communicating to my analysts that you're good. I know where we're going. I'm not going to lead you down a dark alley. And as long as you're with me, we're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good time. You're going to be safe. And that gets the best out of the person. Then your preparation has always impressed me as well. And the way that you're almost, I can't create a word here. The almanac in your brain of golf history. I always knew what you had there. I always leaned on that. So I'm going to ask a different question to you than I'm going to ask to Rick Gaiman. Rick, I'm going to have us position this thing within the numbers. I'm going to have us reference it to history. So I think preparation, and then in the execution of that preparation, knowing where to go with the info.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where I saw this quote the other day about how, like, if you take the smartest generalist in the world, like, even their most creative solution within a domain of expertise can't match up to somebody who's in that domain of expertise, right? And I think that's so true. And I don't know that I've always thought that, but as I've experienced, people like you and people like Rick, who it's like you build up this library. Like he has such a library of like recall on stuff, and I just think that is I think it's an underrated skill, and I'm curious about how, like, if you've experienced that, like where it kind of flipped for you within. You talked about comfortability. When did you get comfortable? When did you build up enough of like the library of like, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I know what I'm doing, and I'm still going to prepare, but I know some stuff, and get really comfortable within that seat?
I was going to always ask you a question at some point here. Would you, in what you've experienced with me, would you identify one of my traits and the way that I approach I guess I don't have to pose it as a question. There's a little bit of a blind confidence built through the way that I, one, in the preparation, but like I never understood I did it. You don't do it for the haters. Everyone told me I could my whole life. And I understand that that's a rare thing, but like it built sort of like I won't say false sense of confidence, but my starting point has been confidence. I remember looking into the camera at the Medill School of Journalism when I was getting my grad degree, the first day we were doing on cams, and feeling like I was where I was supposed to be. So I've started there, and there's been things that move you away from how comfortable you are. There's things that move you towards it. Repetition being the biggest thing, and like time on task now being however long it's been, a decade in broadcast. Comfortability just comes through repetition, but also giving yourself the credit for the repetition that you've worked through. Like I know you're doing a new thing here, but the repetition on camera, the repetition in turning on tight deadline, like the deadlines now, you've worked in the deadlines now your whole life. Mm-hmm. That muscle's there. It's just sometimes like I even feel it when I go on, like I'll take one bigger vacation a year. And if I'm not on I could do a week and feel normal. That 8th day, I come back on day 9. It's like, my shirt doesn't fit right. Like you gotta, it's just a couple repetitions to get you back to that basis that you've set in being that point of confidence.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I'll get the keyboard back out after a week and
like, where's the cue?
Do I remember how to type here? I think what you brought up is a really good point though. And I think that the idea of, whether you want to call it privilege or not, like the idea of having people in my life that encourage me toward things that I turned out to be decent at was like really a meaningful thing. And it's not to say that you're like great starting out, but people are like, at least, and I think this is what you're saying. I've had people in my life that are like encouraging of like, hey, there's something here, like go do this. And that's invaluable. And I think you don't realize it when you're 23 or 27 or whatever, but looking back, you're like, I wasn't great, but there was something there and somebody encouraged me in that. Yeah. And that's really important.
I can't even watch my old stuff because like, I was like, why was that kid so confident? But it makes you feel like it makes it feel like there's a net under your feet when you're walking the tightrope, especially early on. Now I reflect upon it after big moments when we like really knock one in on a Super Bowl Sunday or a Masters weekend and getting to do those talkbacks with Trevor and with Romo and those moments, like those fill up your cup. But like the day-to-day of it too is where you rep the stuff, is where you try the stuff to take to the bigger moments. But when you were talking about the ability to call upon the information that you've retained, I think that can only come through genuine interest. Yeah. I think we are so genuinely interested in the things that we're talking about that our mind retains them in a way. It's like, I'll need that. I'll need that because I love this thing. And if it's not a thing you love, you're probably not gonna be able to file it and call upon it the way that you do. So like, again, back to your superpower being that like, that recall of the moment or something, a reference point that you felt one time, whether you were there or whether you were behind your keyboard, that's the superpower. And that's I think the thing that amplifies all the work, that ability to be genuinely charismatic about the thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. Well, Joe, I appreciate the time. This is, I always love talking to you, whether it's on camera or off. People, you'll have to come back and do like an After Dark episode where you do your Romo impression along with all your impressions. I've heard a few of those. Yeah, I appreciate your time. I'm excited to see a Ryder Cup here in, I guess when this comes out, it'll be a couple away. So
me, you, Donald, everybody's going to be there. You know, DJT, your guy. Well, what body of water will we crossing? We won't go. Yeah. That was Valhalla. Valhalla. I love you, pal. I'm looking forward to consuming these as much as I am to like being a part of them every so often. If you ever need me, you know I'm a call away.
Absolutely. Love you too. And thanks for the time, Joe.
You got it.
Okay. So one thing I wanted to say before I get into kind of some takeaways from Joe there is just I've really enjoyed doing these, maybe even more than I thought I would. It's always fun to catch up with friends that, you know, all these guys are people that are on here I don't get to talk to as much as I would like. And I learn from all of them as well. But yeah, it's been really fun. It's been really fun to kind of record this and put it together and piece it together. So yeah, I guess that's a great thing. I didn't know if I would enjoy it, and I very much am so far. In terms of what Joe said, I think the biggest one for me is preparation. He was very complimentary in the way that he talked about my preparation. I think that I didn't always do a great job when I was at CBS Sports of preparing. Some of that was purposeful. I wanted to react to things as much as possible in the moment, especially when we were on site. Like I enjoyed the idea of just reacting in the moment. I think that's a different thing, and it can be very compelling in kind of a different way. But I think preparation for this podcast specifically is really important. Obviously, and the reason I say it like that is because I think sometimes people just think, oh, you just turn the mics on and see what happens, and you can do that. And I think some people do that. Some people are very good at that, but I don't think that is what this podcast is or this show is going to be. I think there's going to be more prep work, more research. That's where the learning happens, right? Part of the writing the newsletter for me is the act of writing is partly the act of research, which is where I learn. And so the writing is almost secondary or tertiary to what the actual action is, which is learning and building up that knowledge base like Joe and I were talking about. So I think that's my takeaway from talking to Joe, or one of them. He had several there that I think are important, but that is number one after talking to him. Okay, Brendan Porath, Fried Egg, Shotgun Start, formerly of the New York Times. Tell people you're New York Times, work for the New York Times.
I mean, occasionally. If it depends on the company. I mean, if they know what the gig is and they need to, then no. But if it's some sort of hoity-toity BS where they need to be impressed for some reason.
Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you coming on. I've been obviously a long-term admirer and sometimes participant in your endeavors and your shows and podcasts you put together. And I've been just talking to different people today about what is one thing that you would tell somebody starting out a show or a podcast to make it great, or one thing you would go back and tell yourself when you started podcasting and making shows. Just what would you say to that person?
Feels so simple. So I didn't prepare for this at all, which is maybe of a piece. I didn't know what the question would be. I didn't know what you wanted to talk about, which may be of a piece of like, I've always found that when you're overstructured and overscheduled, it's counterproductive to whatever. Maybe it's just specific to what we do. Maybe it's specific to how I work and how I operate in the podcast platform. But I found that like just showing up and being you and bringing the energy, taking it seriously that's work, right? It's work, but I think it often yields the best product, and not getting over scripted and over structured to me for this platform, for this medium, is critical. And that may sound like I'm not prepared, or I'm lazy, or I'm not like, yeah, I guess I'm not coming to work prepared, or not showing up prepared. Like, I will watch all the golf. I will make just a page of notes, or I will figure out what the general outline is or subject matter is, and then go from there and hope you have the chemistry, hope you have the dynamic. Not every podcast or interview will have that, but I think, ready to be you with a little bit of energy and sort of the background is the way to go, and not being too scripted, not being too prepared, not being too insecure as I ramble here. Like, this is part of it. Not being so insecure that like a mistake or a stumble will happen. Now, I'm not talking about the NPR scripted this, that with these beautiful transitions. There's like a different product. I think like, be secure in who you are and what you know, and understanding like the audience respects like your self-deprecation and your, I don't know if humility is the word, but like, that you make mistakes and you're just here to have a conversation.
Well, incredibly, and I promise people this is not scripted out, you have somehow encompassed all like the three things that people before you, I think you'll be last in kind of the order here.
Yeah.
The three things people before you said: Bob Sturm said, be yourself, which you echoed. Joe Musso said, be prepared, which you are going against.
Maybe.
And DJ Piehowski said, embrace contradictions, which kind of encompasses what you and Joe are both saying there. I thought DJ's idea of like embracing contradictions is totally true, because it's like, you're right. Like, you are not an unprepared person, right? You don't just like fly into these podcasts and you're like, well, what are we talking about? Like, you have the library, the database of stuff in your head, but you also don't over prepare. And I think embracing both of those things is great. And I think it can be very difficult at times.
Yeah. And I think like I've heard of certain like podcasts who will like stop if like they're unsure, or like if it's a serious matter, if you're like, I don't know, accusing someone of a war crime, you better be right. You better know that like you're okay, stop, edit it, talk yourself through it, figure it out what you're about to say. But I think like part of the magic is just letting it flow and understanding that you are not the be all end all know it all at the end of the day. And maybe that takes some humility, but just trying to be relatable in a way that this medium can be with chat.
When you guys started Shotgun Start, when did you first realize, like, because I remember the group text you sent of like, you've probably talked about this publicly. Is Shotgun Start not a dumb name? I don't even think if you asked it was a good name, just like, is this not stupid? And
I don't remember this.
I remember that group text and everybody's like, it's fine, whatever. But what was the moment where you guys realized like, people actually like this? Like, this is a thing. Like, this is like a fun thing that people have really enjoyed.
I feel like hopefully pretty early. Like, we started in September which like, talk about like a terrible time to start like a golf podcast, like right about when golf's about to go into hibernation and go away. But this may be a good sign, a bright light, is it was a Ryder Cup year. We had 2018 Ryder Cup, and that of course combusted in magnificent ways in Paris with the Team USA and the recriminations afterwards. But I think around that time I could tell. And it didn't mean if it was like a couple hundred people, like there was like pretty positive feedback and people were listening. And Andy and I, as you have done, like had developed our own followings and done a lot of work in a lot of different areas before then. So it was kind of like we built up a level of authority or rapport or audience following. And, But it started to get a little bit of momentum pretty early. And it's not like I saw the numbers go through the roof, but just the feedback that people were enjoying this. There seemed to be good chemistry. The end product seemed to be very unique for the time, like something that was not repetitive or it was a little different. And so I think pretty early we started around Labor Day 2018. And I think by October, I felt like, all right, there's people responding to this and people seem into it and the idea isn't bad.
I think I'm curious if you agree with this. I think people overrate audience size and underrate audience feedback.
I think so. I like I want to be talking to the most quote unquote real people as possible that are on the other end. I've been in several different, roles where, I just rack up like millions and millions and millions of hit, but I don't know what's real and what's the relationship. This medium and some colleagues like SB Nation, Vox, like Spencer Hall and Holly Anderson, that what they do, their every day should be Saturday, what it used to be, now shut down Fullcast. They talk about the really weird and unique relationship that podcasting can develop, where and this was totally accurate like 8 years ago or whenever I first heard it, of like the listener feeling like they're a part of not your life but your current state or your current happenings, ongoings. And like I will see and meet people for the first time, and I did that like at the BMW week ago. Like I feel, and they say this, like I feel like I kind of know you. I feel like I've been along for like, it's a very, very unique, different kind of relationship between, oh, there's just some figure on your TV or words on a page. It's just, I'm not saying it's better or worse, but it does feel a little more intimate and unique in that way. And so I think as long as you like understand that the number and the millions can kind of get complicated in that way, and try to maintain that sort of relationship on there are a lot of real people on the end that are like vehemently about this community, not just necessarily you and Andy, but like the community of whatever is existing around this podcast.
Yeah. I think last question I have for you is specifically around, because I've been reticent to start anything like a podcast show, video, any of that, partly because I love writing so much, and I feel like that's like the thing I've worked on over the last, however long we've been doing this, is writing. And I know you have loved writing in the past as well. Has that been, or I guess how hard has that been to kind of have to trade some of that writing time for podcast and show time?
It's like a constant like struggle, if not presence in my head, if not sometimes a struggle. And like, there's like a personal vanity there. I think writing's the hardest. It requires the most talent and most skill. In my opinion, that's just my own like vanity maybe coming through. It might not pay the most relative to some of the others that I personally think are intellectually easier to execute. So that's hard for me. There's like a vanity in that, whereas I thought I was a pretty good writer, was going to become a pretty good writer, or do a lot of good writing for forever. And I will probably never stop writing. I do less of it, like you said, but I always want to be a primary role of mine. So yeah, it's something I struggle with, but I've sort of accepted and understood that the way people consume things, hasn't necessarily shifted, but it's become more disparate than ever. And I was with someone, I don't want to say who, I guess necessarily at the Open, and it's like someone prominent person with prominent platforms. It's like, this Open just ended, and like I don't know, like, should I write first or should I record something for an audio platform that they have? And it like that wasn't even in the calculus for me even when SGS was the Shotgun Star was established. Like it was like I write. Like I remember Tiger won the 2019 Masters. I was writing till 1 a.m. And then Andy and I fired up the pod. He was not probably happy about that, but that was like the way it worked. He was writing his stuff too, and that in 2025, just to hear that from someone who has like one of the bigger platforms, like it was a reinforcer of like, hey, it's just a more disparate consumption market right now, right? And audio is taking a big chunk.
Yeah, no, totally. I heard somebody describe it, somebody who's not in golf describe it recently, as like we're returning to telling stories around the campfire. And the campfire is like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, that it's, and anybody can sidle up to the campfire, which I think is such an interesting way to look at it. And I've rejected the idea that you have, and I still don't, like, I think you can make a living as a writer and be a writer, but there is something powerful, like you said, about doing audio and doing a show and everything. So,
and I feel like feel just to contrast like the master story, I feel being on site and relaying that via audio format is just as critical, if not even easier, better, or stronger to do over the audio podcast platform. Like one of the things where we really felt like we added value and differentiated and separated was the 21 PGA at Kiowa. Andy and I felt like we got some real stuff from being on the ground that you couldn't necessarily get everywhere else, and that you would normally put like, this is color and scene in an article. And I feel like you can do that in an audio podcast too. It's not like forbidden, and it doesn't make it any intellectually less substantive. So yeah, I feel like it's the same kind of work, it's just a different delivery.
Yeah. And those people that you've built a quote unquote relationship with feel like they're like traveling to the PGA with you probably, or like read stories like about what your experience was that day.
Yeah. And hopefully I think most of them trust us too at that point too, that we're like, we have a good eye for that, or nothing's obviously made up, but also that it's like, this is the reality or fact, how you would probably interpret being there and in the arena. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks for the time, Porath. Congrats on all the success with Fried Egg, Shotgun Start. It's been fun to see that grow and develop, and you guys have been very faithful to like just keep at it and keep grinding on it. And yeah, I think I speak for a lot of people that I enjoy it and get a lot from it, and have enjoyed seeing all of your personally. I've just enjoyed seeing all of your success as well.
Yeah, well, no one keeps at or grinds, as hard as you do. So, with normal sport taking off on your own platform and then adding this in this audio format, I have no doubt that you will continue to scale up. I don't mean scale in size. I hate that buzzword. I mean climb higher in whatever metric you want to assign it. So good luck.
Perfect ending.
All right.
We'll see you in New York.
See ya.
Okay, that wraps up today's first episode of the Normal Sports Show. I did find it amusing that Porath really summed up the other three folks that we had, or that I had on today. He perfectly hit every single one of theirs. Specifically, DJ's embrace contradictions thing. I do think that Joe Musso's right. Like, being prepared is paramount and important. And I don't think Porath was saying that it's not. I think he was just saying that he prepares in a different way than like, hey, today there's a show, I got to prepare for it. His preparation, and I think where I probably land as well more often, is like this database of building up a ton of knowledge over a long period of time, hopefully. The pointed preparation, I think I will probably do more pointed preparation for this show than somebody like Porath or Andy does for the Shotgun Start. Shotgun Start is obviously, their whole deal is riffing and talking about ridiculous things like ranking the months and stuff like that. So certainly I think there will be some more like specific, because one of our formats is going to be like, hey, next week, like Solly from No Lane Up and I will be talking about, hey, what are our 5 favorite Ryder Cup moments? So there's just preparation for that. Like, you just have to put in a little bit of thought and effort into like, I got to go actually like find what they were so that I can talk about them in a specific and meaningful way. So I loved having Porath on. I loved having everybody on. It was really cool to talk to everybody about like how they view making a really good show. And I think that one of the things, again, that came through with Porath is like, and this is what Bob Sturm was saying as well, is like, just be yourself and don't worry about it looking or being perfect. I think people connect with things that are not perfect. There was a great quote I saw recently. I don't even know where I saw it, but it was like, hey, something like spelling errors or grammar errors in newsletters is a good thing. And the point was like, you don't want spelling errors all over the place, obviously, but the point was like, people connect with things that are clearly, and I think this is increasingly true going to be increasingly true in the AI era, that people connect with the reality is humans connect with other humans. And so the logic is humans humans connect with things that other humans make, right? And so I think it's a tell when you have a spelling error, because stuff that AI makes is not going to have spelling errors, right? So I think that is something that's something I think about a lot, and I think it's something that will become increasingly true in the years to come. So thank you guys for tuning in to this first show. I, again, loved it more than I thought I would. It was a ton of fun. I learned a lot. I've got a ton of stuff to apply to my own show as we kind of build this out, and hopefully make it into something that's worth tuning into every single week.